All right, I would like to reconvene the board from closed session. There are no reportable items to report today. With that, I would ask you to, if we could please stand, and I would ask our student rep, Ray, if she would please lead us in the Pledge of Allegiance.
Ready, salute. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Okay, so thank you all for attending today's meeting. Is it just me, or does it seem like 5 or 6 weeks since we were here last? Is that about right?
It has been.
Yeah. Okay, so the first item on our agenda is the organizational meeting of the Board of Trustees. It's that seasonal time of the year. So I would ask our President Superintendent, Mr. Calvin, if he would please take care of this part of the organizational meeting for us.
I'd be happy to. The first position that we will entertain nominations for is the office of the board president.
I nominate Ken Nunes.
Second.
A first and a second on Ken. Any further discussion?
We think Ken's doing
Or
a great job.
nominations?
Hopefully he
They
accepts.
just want me to continue until I get it perfected, I guess. That's right.
Oh, boy, we got a long way to go.
Yeah.
Let you keep going
My
because you
term's
do
up
have it
soon.
perfected.
We'll move to close the nominations and cast a unanimous ballot.
Okay. So how did
Takes
that
a
work?
second.
We need a second on that?
Need a second?
Second.
And then a vote, and then we're
A
done.
second, a third,
Raymond
and
beat
fourth.
me.
Wait, okay. Who seconded?
Raymond, we'll give it to him.
Then I call for voting on that second piece then.
Yeah, that does it.
Okay, hearing no more discussion, those in favor of Ken on a unanimous vote, please signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Those opposed? Motion carries. Thank you, congratulations, President Nunes.
Okay, we stuck again. Thank you for your confidence.
The next office is the office of the board vice president. And again, I would accept nominations for that office.
I'd like to nominate John Lane for that position.
Second.
I have a first and a second for John Lane.
I move to close nominations
And cast
And
unanimous
cast unanimous
and
ballot.
cast unanimous ballot.
Second.
Second, I have a first and a second. There's no more further discussion. Those in favor of the motion, please signify by saying aye.
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 Those opposed, same sign. That motion carries. And then finally, we have the office of the board clerk. I'm open to nominations for that office.
Nominate Raymond for clerk of the board.
Second.
I have a first and a second for Raymond as the board clerk.
Move to close nominations, cast unanimous ballot.
Second.
All righty, those in favor signify by saying aye.
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 Those opposed, same sign. Motion carries. Congratulations to both John and Raymond.
It's not that Lori and I really don't want to do the job, it's we figure it's time to,
Oh, we appreciate that.
Pass the baton. Thank you.
absolutely.
I agree. Share the blessing.
Right.
That's right.
Okay, you
We
want
got
me
your
to
back,
keep
Ken.
going here?
Yeah, if you don't mind, tell us about item B.
Okay, item B is, we have a form here that just,
Oh, shoot. I signed these already. I'm not the clerk anymore. Is it
That's
before or
okay.
after?
No worries. Yep.
Here, take mine.
Oh, everybody
These are
has
just
one.
authorized
Yeah,
okay.
signatures
so
for the calendar year 2020. It's required by the Tulare County Superintendent of Schools, and so we just take care of that here at our organization meeting. The authorization extends to myself, Mr. Perez, Dr. Lacerna, Ms. Morrison, Ms. Miller-Hernandez, and Ms. McCauley.
So we
We
just
need a-
say.
So does
yeah.
this take a motion?
Yeah.
So moved.
Second.
Okay, we have a, I'm sorry.
We have a first and a second. Further discussion on the item? Those in favor of authorizing these 6 signatures signify by saying aye.
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 Those opposed, same sign. Motion carries. Moving to C, we also have our regularly scheduled board meetings for 2020. Do we have a schedule there? I think it's
Item 1.
item 1.
And it's listed.
It should say 20. It says 19, right?
It doesn't.
For
Well, I guess it is 2020, right?
Then C right here should be 2020, right?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Oh, no, I'm
So
looking
in
here on item
in
1.
Oh,
yeah.
oh, in item 1, yes.
And C,
That's okay. The date, as long as the dates are right. Are those dates right? Yeah. Under item
I
1.
triple checked them. And
You
had someone
triple
else,
checked
and I
it?
had someone else in the office check them,
we just missed that, yeah. So we've got,
except the 19.
most commonly, they're the second Monday of each month. In, well, it looks like even
That's
in
correct.
December, would that work?
There were, oh, you know what, you're right.
December, we may have to look
Push
at
that back.
because it may not fit into that new law. The reason we're meeting today instead of last Monday is because it has to fit into a window. So that might be changed to the 21st, but we'd certainly have the ability to bring that back and change it at our next board meeting. Otherwise, we are.
I thought we looked at that and it worked, but maybe I'm wrong.
For next December?
I swear we looked at next December and it worked because the first landed on a Tuesday. I think we were still in that window, but I may be wrong. I thought we looked at those rules at one meeting.
Right, yeah.
But
We'll double check that, and if need be, we've
Yep,
got a
okay.
whole year to correct that. Any other challenges with these dates for anybody?
Is there a discussion on the place, location, while we're talking about this?
Oh, we certainly can. That would be a good time for that.
One of the recommendations I wanted to make is whenever we have an annual report from one of our centers, that, for example, in November, we do a Tulare Center annual report, that we move the board meeting to the location. So when we do, in November, my recommendation would be to have the board meeting in Tulare, and then when we review Tulare's center, to have the meeting in Hanford, excuse me, in Hanford. So that would just, my
We
recommendation.
used to do that sometimes, didn't we? We used to meet like.
That's when we did our
Tulare
joint
and
meetings.
Hanford.
That-
Or is that
was
when we
our
did the-
meeting.
just
Those were
the
our
joint
special
We've had-
meetings. Those weren't board meetings. Oh, no, we would.
We've certainly done our joint meetings out there, and we've also done our retreats out there, which Raymond and I have talked about this, and I said we could go back to doing our retreats just to give all the board members a better opportunity to visit sites. And then he asked me if we've ever moved our regularly scheduled board meetings to those places, and
We have.
and we did.
I was president of the board at the time that we did it in Tulare.
I remember when
Yeah.
when I was introduced as the interim president, it was out in Hanford in July 1st.
Yep.
So I know that we have done that. It's just the will of the board, whether or not we want to go back. We can certainly accommodate that. There's probably some pros and cons to it.
Yeah, I think that may be something, I'm glad you brought that up, because I do recall doing that as well. Maybe it's something we could talk a little bit more about during our retreat.
And maybe, logistics for everybody, if that's too much of an inconvenience.
Yeah.
You could try to talk us out of it too, because
And-
we don't,
And maybe one, and
Maybe one year
because
and
of
one
that,
next
maybe
year.
one year and one the other year, so we're not
Sure.
taking two meetings and moving everybody to a different location, so.
And we can certainly get
So we can
the
kinda-
provost's opinion and see how they
Yeah.
feel about it as well.
Yeah,
Good idea.
all right, well, good.
So do we have to approve that calendar? I move to approve the calendar for 2020 then.
Lori first,
Yep.
Second.
second from Greg. Further discussion on that? Those in favor of approving the board dates for 2020 as presented signify by saying aye.
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 Those opposed, same sign. Motion carries. The final item is board member committee representatives. And we've got the current service itemized there. We could have, in fact, we should just open it up for discussion in terms of whether we keep those same board members representing those same boards or whether we shuffle the deck a little bit.
Okay. So why don't I suggest that, let's just start with item one, and if there is anyone that would either like to be off of the committee or somebody else that would like to be on the committee, otherwise we would leave it the same. So let's start with item one, that's the budget subcommittee, and that's Board Member Cardoza and Board Member Lane. What are your thoughts on that, and anybody else for that matter?
Personally, I'd like to stay on one more year and feel comfortable with the finances. It would seem to me, unless it's a violation of the Brown Act, that we could have as many as are interested, but that's just a thought.
Yeah, I don't know if you could have more than two on there.
You just have to notice it.
You'd have to notice it, yeah.
Yeah, I would suggest we keep it to two, make it a lot easier on everybody, I think, so,
And I'd like to stay on another year unless
Okay.
someone else really wants it.
all right, well, that's great, I would appreciate that.
Okay.
Okay.
We'll take them all. So the next one is the California Community College Trustees Association, CCCT. Trustee Macareno currently represents the board on that association. Raymond, how do you feel about staying on?
Well, I want to, both of them actually, even the COS Foundation is open it to any of my fellow trustees to represent the organization. If not, then I'd be happy to continue on. But for example, the COS Foundation, I'd like to encourage, I think it was a great opportunity to meet other community members as well as those that support our foundation, meet the other board members that help raise money for our organization, but happy to continue if needed.
Okay, well, I don't have a problem with that.
I don't have a problem with it either. You and I used to trade off all the
Yeah,
time on
and
the
I don't,
foundation, so we don't have a problem with you staying on
If you
there.
can't make a meeting, let me know, and I'd be happy to make a meeting.
I plan to continue on to their subcommittees, so I would like to still continue to participate, but I think the foundation meetings, I'd welcome another trustee or someone to be an official, but
You
Okay,
got
so
it.
you're saying that you would like somebody else to be the designated representative to the foundation?
correct.
Okay, well, okay, so now I understand. So that being the case, if nobody else would like to do it, I'd be happy to do that. Is that okay with Mr. Foster? I'm not sure he's.
It's absolutely okay. I'll take all five.
Okay, so I will be the designated rep.
And then how about for the Trustees Association? Raymond, are you fine with staying on that, or would you like to?
Yes, I'd be happy to continue on, but if anyone would like to represent COS,
Okay, well, I'm okay with that if, as long as the other board members are in agreement, so that's okay there.
4 is the COS Ag Advisory Committee. Currently, Lori is the representative.
Same as Raymond, I'm happy to stay on it.
Okay.
It's kind of in my backyard, but if somebody else really wants it, I'm okay with passing it on as well.
I would appreciate it if you would do it.
Okay.
You have the background, and so that's okay. And then the board rep on the election
Did you work
county
hard on that
committee.
committee?
Whatever that is, I'd be happy to do it again, because I think I did a great
None
job.
of us ever know what that
You were
is every
excellent.
year.
They'll probably give you a trophy, Ken. It is a committee through TCOE. We're one of many districts within TCOE, and generally when there's a district that is splitting into two or combining, it requires a vote of all the districts, and that individual would be called upon at that point to cast their vote on behalf of our district. Doesn't come up all the time. It's not terribly cumbersome, but Ken, since you did such a great job last year, I'm sure your board members would support you in doing it again this year.
I'm sure they
Okay.
would. Okay, well, very good. I don't think this piece requires action. It's an
No,
appointment.
you're just appointing.
Okay, thank you, Megan, for that. So, your duties are concluded for the evening.
Okay, I'll shrink
until
back to my
we,
little office over here.
All right, well, thank you very much for that, and we will move on to the next section of our agenda, starting with public comment. Per board policy 2350, any person may address the board, excuse me, at this time on an agenda item or other matters of interest to the public that are within a subject matter jurisdiction of the board. A maximum of 5 minutes is allowed for each speaker, with a maximum time of 15 minutes per item unless otherwise extended by the board. So with that, are there any public comments today concerning items that are on the agenda? Appears to be none. Public comments concerning items not on the agenda? None as well. All right, so we're going to ask our board, our student trustee, Ray, for her report today.
Yeah, so Student Senate, we participated in the Christmas parade. People from the music department joined us, some folks from EOPS, and then people from the Friday Night Lab made us this really cool infinity mirror that was like in the shape of a present, and it said College of the Sequoias on it, and it was the coolest thing, so I want to thank them for that. We also worked on our homeless project. We made 14 backpacks with toiletries and some like school supplies, and yeah, we'll be distributing that soon. We're also still working on our voter registration project. We've been able to register over like 300 people, I think it is, but we are planning on doing a lot more, hopefully, in the upcoming semester. And we also worked on little thank you cards for our staff. We wanted to wish them a happy holidays and just express our gratitude for everything that they do for students. So hopefully you guys got those. We also are going to be going on our retreat on January 7th and 8th, and that's just an opportunity for us as a board to plan for the upcoming semester. And yeah, that's it for me.
Good. You're almost done with finals. Good luck with that last one.
Thank you so much.
All right, very good. Board member reports, starting with Mr. Sherman.
No report.
I actually just wanted to mention that I attended the 2019 annual convention by the Community College League of California. And in attendance, I actually completed my Excellence of Trusteeship program while I was there. So they provide your certificate after completing different coursework in accreditation, Brown Act, board evaluation, ethics, governance, and student success. So I was happy to complete that year-long process, and just wanted to share that I attended that conference. Yeah, thank you.
Pastor Final.
Yes.
You might share with them what you told me about some of the other board members you met down there.
There's trustees from all over the state, and there's board meetings that start at 2 p.m. go all the way to 10 p.m. So I was not envious of some of the other elected officials there that have a lot of community input. So it was interesting to hear about the differences of other colleges. So.
Yeah, we don't want to start that practice.
No, for sure. Mr. Lane?
No report.
No report. Just want to wish everybody a Merry Christmas and Happy New Year. Not that the
Likewise.
meeting's over yet, but
Likewise for me.
I probably won't have a chance to say that.
All right, Mr. Foster's up next with the foundation report.
Thank you. I have a really brief report. Thank you, Trustee Macareno, for your service on the foundation board this past year, and I'm excited to keep you engaged and involved in the Alumni Association as we start to build that out. So thank you very much for your time on that. And Ken, welcome back. You lucky elected official, you. Back to the COS Foundation. So I appreciate you stepping up and joining us back on that. My one item that I wanted to share with you is this is the season where we collect scholarship applications for the COS scholarships that we administer at the COS Foundation. We were a little concerned, frankly, that the change in the scholarship funding from the state to underwrite tuition would lower our people that are filling out scholarship applications. We were surprised at having over 2,978 applications started. That is a substantial increase over the prior year. Of those started, we had 1,179 completed. So a large amount of getting in there, but somewhere along the way they stop it. And we're always looking to further refine our application and make it as easy as possible to hit that submit button. But the two things that we have learned over the years in surveying the people that don't hit submit, because we email them and say, why didn't you hit? There's a lot of reasons, but the primary reasons are the essay and the letters of recommendation. And those are the things that my volunteer evaluators don't want to let go of having some narrative of what your life is like leading to this point, and some people vouching for you. So I'm not sure how we're going to fix that, but 1,179 is an improvement. It's a 12% increase over last year's number of submissions, but it's 2,978 is a 37% improvement in our number of students that initiated the process. And I really want to thank our Welcome Center employees and all the employees that reach out into the feeder high schools. They did a tremendous job of helping get the word out, and that's the only reason why I can see why that application rate went up so high. So I want to thank them for that. Bottom line, we have plenty of applications to award about 440 scholarships at about $420,000 again this year. I'll be able to let you know about how those awards occurred, the final numbers on number of awards and total amount awarded at your May meeting.
So I did some letters of recommendation, and maybe there's a way too for the people filling out the apps to let the people they asked to write letters. It's very simple.
Yeah.
You know, you can even write it right there, or you can just import your letter in. You guys don't make it too hard on that. So,
We really don't.
you know, I think maybe there's giving them the information if they ask for a letter of recommendation to say it takes, it doesn't take that long.
Yeah.
So,
Well, again, with the publicity of Free College for All, we are really happy to see that we're still moving that number. It's still a very small percentage of total number of students attending college, but it's more than we can fund, so we're in good shape.
that's
Okay, thank you all.
I would say,
yes, sir.
just with 1,100 applications to review, please express our thanks to the
Yes.
volunteer reviewers.
It's a small army for sure.
Oh, my goodness.
Yes. Thank you.
That's a great service that they
Yes,
provide.
indeed. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Foster. Next up is Dr. Lacerna, who's made her way to the podium for the monthly accreditation.
Great. A quick update that the accreditation work group met last week with the members of our college community who have been on site visits this semester. And so I shared these names with you last time, but Francisco Banuelos, our dean, Stephanie Collier, math faculty, Mary Catherine Oxford, our director of the Learning Center, Dr. Thea Trimble, and Dr. Dolly Ozturk all attended site visits. So we had a great chance to meet with them last week and get an update on their experiences and all of the changes that have been made with accreditation. In addition, we have completed several substantive change proposals to the ACCJC, which were approved. And you can see the language there, but we're required to do a substantive change request anytime that we bring on a new program, we delete a program, and then there's larger things like if we open a new campus or if we change the mission of the college, you have to do a substantive change request. So we were approved for the list of the associate degree for transfer programs. Those are all new over the last couple of years. I think we have on the back 7 new programs, 8 new programs, and then 3 program eliminations. And those program eliminations they came through the curriculum process here at the board, and they've all been replaced by other programs. So the students stayed in those programs, completed and/or have been transferred to other programs. So those were all recently approved in the last week. And then the last thing is the ACCJC has their annual, they meet twice a year. Their meeting is January 15th through 17th in San Diego, and they ask that we share this publicly and publicize that their open meeting is January 15th. And we're not in it this time, but we're still supposed to publicize that. So sharing the news in case anyone's interested in attending that meeting.
We'll pass on attending. We don't have
Okay.
to.
We can wait 6 more years, 6.5.
Yeah, no
okay?
kidding.
All right, questions for Dr. Lucerna? Thank you. All right, Superintendent President report.
All right, well, tonight I have the honor of awarding a really exciting award to one of our departments here on campus. But first, I want to just hit a couple other things and finish with that. Last week was a busy week in our theater. If Nick Terry was here, he could attest. I think it was last Sunday, we had a fabulous band concert. The theater was filled with community members, students, and staff and faculty alike. It was fabulous. Michael Tackett does a phenomenal job. Fast forward to Friday night, John Sorber does an equally impressive job with our choir and choral programs, and the theater was packed to the gills. It was almost like a Convocation Friday with people sitting in the aisles, and it was fabulous. And then back up a night, on Thursday night, Chris Mangles did a one-man presentation of A Christmas Carol, the Scrooge and Ghost of Christmas Past and Present and Future, and it was billed as a one-man presentation, and I just thought, how can anybody pull this off? And I even probably said something to that effect to my wife on the way in, and we walked out, and she said, well, I guess we have our answer, because the guy crushed it. It was amazing. He, with just himself and just a little podium and a light I know he had the whole thing memorized, but he kind of feigned like he was reading a story to us. He had a couple of costumes hung up on a coat rack, and he had 25 different voices. He had a narrator voice, and then he had a voice for every character in there, and he would go back and forth. It was unbelievable, and such a fantastic presentation. I was glad that the theater was packed. I only wish that we could run 10 or 15 straight nights of it, just so everybody in our community could see the talent that we have on our faculty, as well as our student body. It really was amazing, and I guess he does it about every 5 years as a fundraiser for one theater or another in town. 5 years ago, it was at the Enchanted Playhouse. Last week, it was our turn, but just a lot of fun. So I'm just reminded over and over just the talent and how lucky we are to have that talent on our campuses. The other thing is good news. We're just trying to tie up FTES apportionment numbers from the fall, and it looks like we are up a couple of percentage points. We were concerned about AB 705 English and math, the effect that would have on our enrollment, and it has had some effect on English and math, but overall we're still up for the fall, and we're working like heck to make sure it happens for spring as well. So hold tight for that. Maybe by the February board meeting, we'll be able to kind of report back on what spring enrollment looks like. But right now, we're right on course to at least reach what we had for spring of 2019. Speaking of the spring, we've got a few dates in January, and I think you all have Outlook reminders on those, but we have Convocation Friday from 8 to 10 a.m. on Friday the 10th of January. Similar format to what we did in the fall. We'll have a presentation. We actually, in the spring, we bring in a guest speaker. So we'll have a guest speaker. You don't have to listen to me the whole time. We'll have a guest speaker. And then by 9:30, hopefully, we'll bring that to a close and we'll serve a brunch out here in front of the Sierra building again. That was a big hit, so we're going to try to make that a tradition. So that's on Friday the 10th. If you want to verify that. We have our regular scheduled board meeting on Monday the 13th. We'll let you know what time closed session will start, but it'll be at 4:30 as normal. And then we have our board retreat that same week, Thursday afternoon, the 16th, from probably 12 to 4. We'll feed you lunch and have some presentations. And then we'll come back in the morning of the 17th, starting, and I think we're going to serve some kind of breakfast at 8:30, start at 9, serve a lunch, do closed session after lunch, and be out of there by 2 or 3. Pretty standard for us, but that's our board retreat on the 16th and the 17th. Any questions?
Where are we doing it this year?
We're going to do it at Fresno Pacific again. That's what we've had set up. Now, we'll also have that conversation about moving board meetings to either Hanford or Tulare. And one other option, if we so chose, is to just start going back and moving our retreat days by year, Tulare, Visalia, Hanford. We used to rotate that quite a bit. We've just found that the Fresno Pacific option kind of allows all of our staff to relax and be part of the retreat, but we can certainly modify that if the board so desires.
Okay.
Any questions on what I've covered so far? Okay, now let's get to the fun part then. And if I could have Adrian Beltran and his group just come up here. EOP&S stands for Equal Opportunity Programs and Services. It's a program that serves first-generation college students. We serve 1,200 students a year in this program. And there's all kinds of great programs here at the College of the Sequoias, many of which are successful because they follow a blueprint similar to what our EOP&S program does. These folks recruit students, and they're so successful in retaining the students because they show from the very beginning that they care about their future, and they require them to meet with staff and counselors a certain amount of times per semester. They're very intrusive that way. They've just done a fabulous job. We're being recognized this year because we're one of just a few programs in the state that have been in existence for the entire 50 years that EOP&S has been a program. The state introduced it in 1969, and at that time, someone, my guess is it was Ivan Cruikshanks, had the opinion that it would be good for the College of the Sequoias, and so he helped to start it and support it, and so we've been in existence for 50 years. So as EOP&S statewide was celebrating 50 years, our local state assemblyman, Devin Mathis, got this resolution from the state assembly that has a ton of whereases, but ultimately it says, "Congratulations, College of the Sequoias, and thank you for your support of students in Tulare and Kings County for carrying on the good tradition of EOP&S." So I've asked Adrian to come up and introduce his folks, but Adrian, on behalf of our Board of Trustees, I'd just like to congratulate you on the program you've run. You guys do a fabulous job, and I know they'd all like to meet your staff. So please, congratulate EOP&S for us.
Good evening. Again, thank you. And I'd like to introduce our staff, but before I introduce them, I'd like to thank them for their hard work and commitment to our students each and every day. They go over and above each and every day to serve our students and make sure that our students get the help that they need. So again, thank you guys. And I also want to thank our administration, our dean, Jenny, our VP, Jessica, and Brent, and the board for your support. Without your support, this wouldn't be possible. So thank you guys. We have Kathy Rodarte, our EOPS counselor. Emily Briones, EOPS counselor. Brett Kennedy, our EOPS program specialist. Sandra Castillo, EOPS clerical assistant. And Carolyn Franco, EOPS student services specialist. And then we also have 3 staff that couldn't make it today. We have Maria Patino, our EOPS counselor. Jason Ford, our Next Up counselor coordinator. And Showa Yang, our EOPS counselor also that were unable to make it. So thank you guys.
Adrian, tell us how many years you've been running the program, and have your staff tell us how many years they've been part of the program as well.
So I've been here at COS. I started in 2005 as an adjunct counselor in the EOPS program. 2006, I got hired on full-time as a counselor, and I've been the director since 2014.
How many years, just the number of years for everybody?
Number of years in EOPS.
Pardon?
Number of years in EOPS.
Oh, I've been there a long time.
We'll take that.
Over 20 years.
Wow.
Over 10 years.
13 years.
Happy 20 years.
I was an EOPS student, and then now I just completed my 10th year of the program.
Wow.
So that's why it's so great. A lot of years there. That's great.
You all look so young.
Thank you.
I voted that.
You done situated? Congratulations.
Okay, one without the president now. One more without the president. There we go.
No, I'm just kidding.
They'll all look taller in that picture.
Way to go, guys. Thanks for coming in.
All right, well, thank you for all the great work you do.
That concludes my report.
And you are certainly welcome to exit the meeting. You won't hurt our feelings.
See you, Ray.
Merry Christmas.
Merry Christmas. Thank you.
Okay, next up, under reports. First up is the Academic Senate report, and I see Mr. Turner in the audience, and no report today. Well, thank you for being here. All right, Costa report. Mr. Hurst is not here today, so no report there. Mr. Terry, I don't see him here. Must be getting close to Christmas. Dr. Erickson.
No comments?
No
To wish you all a very happy holiday, and thank you for your leadership and partnership this past year.
Thank you for being here.
Thank you. All right, that takes care of COSAFA. Consent calendar. All items listed on the consent calendar are considered routine and will be enacted by one motion. An item may be removed from the consent calendar at the request of any member of the Board of Trustees or any person in the audience and considered as a separate agenda item. So with that, we have 6 items on the consent calendar today. If there are any items that need to be pulled, please so signify. If none, then I would entertain a motion to approve the consent calendar.
So moved, and I have a question. Ray, are you on the out-of-state trip to DC this
I
year?
went last year.
You went last year, so
Yeah.
you're giving someone else a turn. All right.
Yeah.
So moved.
Second.
All right, we have a motion and a second for the approval of the consent calendar. If there's no further discussion, all those in favor, please signify by saying aye.
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 Opposed, same sign, none. Consent calendar is approved.
I think it's Kenneth O'Leary who, I think he stood in for you one time, didn't he? Did you guys meet Kenneth O'Leary?
Maybe last year.
I don't
He's a
think-
President's Scholar. I think.
President Scholar, and
Yeah.
he's the
He's the
vice
vice president,
Vice
yeah.
president.
Yeah,
He'll be
awesome
going to
guy, yeah.
Washington DC along with the President Elijah. right?
Elijah, yeah, yeah.
So,
Okay, good.
I
That's a
thought,
great
I
group.
thought you were
It
saying
is-
something
it
about
was
Timothy
amazing.
Leary there for a minute.
no,
You're
no,
back from
no,
back from the 60s.
we're not having a flashback.
Okay, action items. First item, item number 8, curriculum. Dr. Lacerna.
Hello again, and this curriculum report is a little bit large because it's getting close to the time to get into the catalog for next year. So the first page is all new courses, and you can see we've been talking about the math and English sequence. These are 2 new math courses that will provide other opportunities for our students in the math pathway. And then a last one on the second page, a math support course. The rest of page 2 are course modifications, and most of the courses actually all of the courses are here for 5-year review. Page 3, again, all here for 5-year review, so just minor updates to these courses being modified. The same on page 4. Basically what happened is they're up for modification every 5 years, and this whole group is up for their 5-year review. Auto, business. Page 5, we have comm and culinary, dance, all modifications for 5-year review. On page 6, the same thing. Dance courses and drama courses here for 5-year review. A couple of them are making some minor hour changes. On page 7, again, all of these are econ, drama, education, graphic design being here for 5-year review. Page 8, the same thing. Sorry. And page 9, adding distance learning to our ICT program so students can take these courses face-to-face or via distance ed. A couple of changes on units in our ITEC program. Page 10 is the same modifications as along with page 11. And page 12 is the final course modifications, and 1 change to units. On the bottom of page 12 are program modifications. So those were all course modifications. These are program modifications. Again, they're here for 5 or 2-year reviews. The same on page 13. And then 1 program deletion for a certificate that we were never really able to offer. So that is the report. It's been approved by the Academic Senate and the Curriculum Committee, and we're recommending that the board approve this report.
So moved.
Second.
Motion and a second for approval of the curriculum report as presented.
Did we get a second?
Yes.
We did get a second from John.
Thank you.
Okay, so we have a motion and a second. Is there any further discussion? If not, all those in favor, please signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries. Board policies, item 9, second read. There's 1, 2, 3, 4 BPs.
We have 4
Mr. Calvin.
BPs.
Oh, and we also, okay, that's it.
That'll be
Yeah.
next, yeah. We have 4 on a second read. Trustee Lane and I exchanged some emails earlier about a couple of questions that snuck by us last time. I think we're okay on those. If not, there might be a couple minor changes, friendly amendments that we could make, but I don't think that'll be necessary on those. And if it's something huge, then we'll just bring them back through the regular process and get them back through. So unless anybody has any questions regarding those 4, we'd entertain a motion on those.
Okay,
You want us to
your pleasure.
approve all of them at once?
all 4, yes. All 4 under item
Under
9,
nine.
under item 9.
So moved.
We have a motion and
Second.
We have a motion and a second for the approval of board policies 7385, 7400, 7600, and 7700. If there's no further discussion, all those in favor, please signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed, motion carries. And so item 10 are board policies for first read, and there are about 1, 2,
7,
3, 4,
7,
6.
Looks like there's 6, yeah. So we have 6 that are on first read. I've gotten feedback from trustee Macareno and trustee Lane, which we'll use to make some modifications. Also, we need to point out that BP 7341 didn't initially get attached to our email. We've attached that electronically on the website today, but we do have copies here. So if someone were interested in 7341, there's a hard copy of it here, and of course, it'll come back for second read and approval in January. But with that, we entertain, I think, a motion to extend this to a second read in January.
Motion to approve the first reading of the board policies as presented.
Second.
We have a motion and a second for the approval of initial read and move to second read of the board policies as reflected under item 10. Is there any further discussion? If not, all those in favor, please signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? None. Motion carries. All right, item 11. Mr. Perez is making his way to the podium for the item 11, which is a bid award. Mr. Perez.
Good evening, Board
How
of
are you today?
Trustees. Doing great, thank you. This give you a little overview of the project, but any kind of details or any questions you may or may not have, we do have our Dean of Technology Services here, Glenn, in the audience to address you. What this project is basically adding new cable where needed, replacing old and outdated cable in our older Visalia buildings. We're going to be touching 11 buildings on campus. After this project, what it's going to allow us to do as a district is to improve our Wi-Fi service, provide sufficient computer and printer service on campus. But most importantly is our current phone system is going to be going out of service or lack of service in 2021. So we're going to be migrating from the old telephone system to, if you heard of voice over IP, VoIP, so we're going to be going to that in 21. So this is a prerequisite to get the infrastructure in there. We did get 7 bids. Our lowest bidder came in at $200,000, a little too low than what we thought. So our consultant went back and had a conversation with the low bid. They recognized that their bid was low and they weren't going to be able to perform the services for that price. It was $200,000, I think it was. So they withdrew, so we considered them non-responsive. And then we went to our next lowest bidder, the $360,000. So in front of you tonight is requesting to go ahead and accept this bid. And we're going to start our work right before Christmas, 180 days, and mostly this work is going to be at night. So we're not being intrusive in the classroom and disrupting any kind of students.
Okay,
I just
questions for Mr. Perez?
I just had a question, because it looks like, the nearest closest bid was still like $100,000 over. Is that, not to question but what, that's just the industry, is it because they're busy, what they're using? That just seems like a high number to me.
Yeah, our estimate.
25%.
Our estimate was about 500,000 as well, too, so we were a little surprised, but we went back to them, and they assured us they could do it. So,
Okay.
When did you say they were doing the work?
Before Christmas break, pretty shortly, December.
They gave us a sample schedule. They could start the day after Christmas, but I think realistically they'll probably end up starting the first week.
And they're going to do it so they don't disrupt the classes?
Yeah, they'll start about, we have them scheduled to start about 3 or 4 o'clock in the afternoon. They'll start to set up and do the work in the evening up to about midnight.
And how long do they think it would take?
Their schedule shows about 4 months, so they should be done by the end of April. We expect they're going to run into some issues. Our requirement was for them to finish by August. So we see no problem.
Wow.
was also being funded through.
Yes.
This was being funded through funds, one-time funds that we set aside here at least a year and a half ago for this very
Yeah,
purpose.
it was last fall.
That's fall, okay.
Question, there was a discussion in the agreement about liquidated damages, and it referenced back to a special conditions.
Yeah, so
form.
special,
Did I,
so special conditions, if you go back to part 2 of the agreement, if you do have that in front of you,
Yeah.
that's all contained in our contract document. So when it refers
Right.
back to special
Yeah.
conditions, that's part of a big
no,
document
I
that we do
understand that,
have.
but I didn't see it here. So
No, we don't-
I was
you don't
trying
have
to trace
that.
back what the liquidated damages actually were.
Liquidated damage is $500 a day that we, as a district, can charge them.
Okay. It's pretty modest.
Yeah. But Glenn and his staff will, we'll keep them on track.
$500 a day and a whip, right? Yeah, that'll do it.
Move we approve.
Second.
Okay, we have a motion and a second for the award of the bid award for the structured cabling upgrade to the company of Exact Technology, is that the one?
Yep, Technology Solutions.
Okay, so any further discussion? If not, all those in favor, please signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed, motion carries. All right, thank you, Mr. President.
Still up.
And you are still up for our next item, which is regarding the issuance of some bonds potentially.
Yes, so tonight, I'll introduce Mark Farrell from Dale Scott and Company. I think 3 of the current board members are familiar with Mark. For the other 2 new ones, Mark and his company, Dale Scott and Company, he's our financial advisor, CL's financial advisor, been our financial advisor from some time now. Just to go back from last month, remember I presented a informational report on maybe taking advantage of some lower tax rates or lowest interest rates to save some taxpayers some dollars. What you have in front of you, I'm just showing one slide and I'm going to open it up to Mark, is the difference of the information I showed you last month, which was an interest rate of October 4th, what it was going to save us is at 2.75. As of the 6th of December, that interest rate unfortunately went up 0.40%. So it went from 275 to 315. You kind of see where the savings goes from 1.4 million present value savings to a little over 1.1. Though remember that we are going to refinance almost 5 million, so that savings is a significant amount of savings to our local taxpayers. So with that, what's in front of you now is a resolution seeking the authorization. Let me step back. Have you ever seen Shark Tank? We were here in front of you, yeah, but anyways, that's what I felt like I was doing right now, Shark Tank.
What rate are we paying now?
5%. And I'll leave it over to Mark for any kind of questions you may have.
Good evening, trustees. Yes, so the current rate on the 4.6 million of bonds outstanding is 5%. So almost knocking it down by a full 2%.
But we can't lock this new rate in for some time.
So you could potentially lock the rate in as somewhere between January and April. If we lock in the rate before April, typically there's what's called a forward penalty of about 0.05% per month. Basically, the investor saying, if we're going to lock in more than 30 days ahead of when the financing can actually be completed, we want a little bit of compensation for the fact that interest rates could move between, say, January and April. And so that works out to about 0.05% per month. So a little bit of that question is, is it worth trying to lock in the savings in January and, take a little bit, potentially of a haircut on this 1.5, almost 1.6 million in savings, or just wait until April and, what the rates are in April, that's what we will lock in. It's a little hard to kind of look at a crystal ball and say, where do we think rates are going to be in April? There was an article out this morning in the Journal where the Federal Reserve president in New York said they don't anticipate the Fed raising rates anytime in the near future. We have seen partly of what has raised interest rates the past month or so since October, a little bit more optimism about the status of trade between the US and China. If you kind of watch the markets, the treasury bond market, when a tweet goes out that, you know, we're going to do more tariffs, interest rates plummet. When we start talking about, oh, we're going to resolve our differences, you see interest rates start to creep up. People take their money out of the treasury bond and put it into the stock market. So, you know, I think one of the things we have to keep in perspective, you know, in August, we probably touched historic lows or very near historic lows on interest rates all time. Kind of popped up in September, came back down in October, has come back up. You know, in November and early December, it started to trail back down again. So we're seeing a lot of volatility. But if you look at, you know, historical, you know, context, interest rates are extremely low. Went back and looked at the refinancing the college completed in 2017. It was a little bit larger. It was about $20 million of bonds that were refinanced. The total savings, that net savings, was about $5.4 million. And the present value savings on a percentage basis was about 20%. And so right now we're at 24.5%. So a little bit better on a percentage basis than the 2017 refunding. So, you know, all in, you know, definitely a very good time to be looking at refinancing the bonds.
Aren't the Feds are still expected to cut some more?
They're kind of said, I think the last announcement was I kind of paused, and they'll see what happens with the economic data. I think the Fed is meeting, I think tomorrow and Wednesday, I think, is their last meeting of the year, and the expectation is no change in rates. And the Fed is kind of a good, you know, benchmark to watch, but it doesn't have a lot of impact on, it won't have a really direct impact on these interest rates. So most of these bonds are going to be repaid in 18, 19 years. That's where the bulk of the principal, this $4.6 billion in principal amount sits. So, you know, the Fed changes rates and it really affects the short-term rates. The longer-term rates are a little bit more driven by what investors are thinking is going to happen with the economy over a little bit of longer phase, longer period of time. So that's kind of why we've seen, even though short-term rates really haven't changed much, the longer-term rates came up a little bit because of the optimism about the economy.
Mark, let's say that all heck breaks loose and whatever, and that rate, that 315 rate goes up substantially. At what point should we, at what point can we say, maybe not, or are we, once we commit?
No. So we'll work with staff and won't pull the trigger until really we get close, if we want to wait until that April timeframe. We really will kind of just sit and monitor things. If something changes and we say, you know what, rates have kind of dropped again, it may be a really good time to go ahead and hurry up and lock them in, we make that recommendation. If rates start to creep up and we get to April and we're looking at this and saying, you know, the savings are, you know, only 10%, then we might say, well, wait a second, let's stop and revisit this and decide if it makes sense to move forward. So it really, we won't move forward until kind of staff says, yes, let's finalize this.
Is there a time that we have to do the refinance by,
No.
or?
No.
So you could go, say, maybe 2 years from now and do it?
Correct.
If the market.
Yeah, so if the market, if something went haywire and interest rates really shot up over the next 4 or 5 months, you could, you know, put on the brakes and we could look at this 6 months, a year, 3 years from now.
And there's no upfront fees?
No upfront fees. You know, there's only one fee that the college could ever have to pay. It's the rating fee. And so what we will do is wait. We will not go to the rating agencies until we know we are within 2 to 3 weeks of trying to lock in the interest rates.
Yeah, I would think our rating's got to be better than it was when we did the bonds the first time around.
It is.
Because of our reserves and everything that's going on.
It is. The rating, we'd probably be looking at going to Moody's Investor Service, and the current rating is AA3. And I think it was probably A1, one notch below the first time the district got the bond rating.
And Mark, is the April timeframe, is that just the amount of time it takes to get through the process?
So the April timeframe is basically the first date or window where you could refinance the bonds and not have that 0.05% per month penalty.
Okay.
So we kind of wanted to tee things up, get everything ready if looked like we needed to try to lock something in between January and March, you'd have that opportunity to do so.
It's kind of like a prepayment penalty then.
Right, it's basically, it's actually tax law. So when bonds are sold, they're sold with a date at which point you can refinance them. So, and prior to the, that was called the Tax Cuts and Jobs Act a couple of years ago, where we had changing of the tax laws, districts used to be able to refinance bonds one time more than 90 days ahead of that. And you could refinance them on a tax-exempt basis. Now, that kind of option was taken away. Basically, the Treasury felt, there was 2 series of tax-exempt bonds outstanding, and so money was not going into taxes because these are tax-exempt investments. And so now you have to wait until no more than 90 days ahead of that first payment date, first prepayment date. And so that's why we have to wait until April. The other alternative is, and some districts are doing this, they're doing taxable refunding. So instead of using tax-exempt bonds, you sell taxable bonds, but there your interest rates are pretty significantly higher. So in this case, it doesn't really make sense to try to do that with just 3 to 4 months to have to wait.
So what do you need us to do tonight?
Approve the resolution for us to move forward on the refunding of the bond.
And have the ability to monitor the rates this spring. And you could even set some expected savings for our staff, that if we can't achieve ballpark of this, we just would forego the opportunity. If it got down into the, a couple $100,000 in savings, it sounds like a lot, but, it's less than a penny a year for taxpayers, probably not worth it. So, we're just looking for the resolution to be able to pull the trigger on this if it makes sense for the district.
I don't think the resolution has an amount attached to it.
No, but it would just be based on what's been presented to us.
Right,
Yeah.
right. So,
I move we approve the resolution.
With the parameters kind of listed there. If something changes, then it would come back to the board. Is
a
that fair
material
enough?
change.
Yeah, I'm going to add that too.
That's kind of what I heard.
All right, so we do have a motion. Do we have a second?
Second.
We have a motion, a second for the adoption of resolution 2019-13. Are there any further questions or discussions on this matter? If not, then I would ask Megan to please poll the board.
Trustee Sherman?
Aye.
Trustee Lane?
Aye.
Trustee Cardoza?
Aye.
Trustee Macareno?
Aye.
Trustee Muniz?
Aye. All right, so there you have it. Thank you, Mr. Farrell, for being here.
Thank you, Mark.
And Mark, we're sorry you had to come all the way down here for,
Happy to come up. I actually have another board meeting to go to in Madeira, so
Oh,
I'll
okay.
be racing up to Montreal.
Oh, you have another meeting tonight?
Oh.
Oh, all right.
All
That
right.
traffic
And
on
so that's-
99 is
so
not
we
very
put-
fun.
And so we put you last on the agenda. Good thing it wasn't a long agenda. All right, so I believe that concludes our agenda for this evening. I want to thank you all for attending tonight's meeting. And I want to wish you all a Merry Christmas and a Happy New Year and Happy Holidays, whatever the case might be. So thank you, and the meeting is adjourned.